of the practice GUI Event Handling. In part 1, we created a button, and when we click the button, the background color of the very button toggled. Now in this part 2, you're going to click the button, but you're going to have an effect on a different JComponent. I'm going to show you how to convert a local variable to a field, because that is going to give you the access to the other component while you are in the event handler of the button. And I'm also going to show you how to add padding margin with an EmptyBoder. So let's get started. Here is part 1. I'm just going to run it quickly. As a reminder, I'm clicking the button and the background color of the button toggles. Now, also I want to point out, here are the 2 lines that had to be added if you're having a Mac, otherwise the background color doesn't show. And I want to do one more thing. I'm going to scroll up here, and I want to point out that there is a yellow squiggly line. That's because of a final serial version UID. We're going to learn more about that in the serialization section. If you want to have this warning go away, you can auto-generate a serial version UID. Another thing, please keep in mind, even when we're in GUI, we do need a doc comment. So here we can just say demo how to create an event handler for a button. Something like that, right? Very important. We want to have that on every public class, interface, etc. Now at this point, I would like to go to my design view and add another component. I'm looking here, I see there are no tabs. So one thing that can happen when you create a GUI, you close it, you come back to Eclipse, sometimes it opens in the Java editor and you don't have the tabs like design and source code. If that happens, just close your editor and right click, then say open with. Now it says, would you like the Java editor or the window builder editor? If you say you want to have the window builder editor, then you're going to have the source and the design tabs. So that's how you get those back. I'm going to click on design view. I see my button, and now I would like to add something in addition, namely a JLabel. So here is my JLabel. I'm going to click on that. I'm going to put that on the west side here. It says new label. That's maybe not exactly the name I had in mind, but I can add it right here. I can say, well, this is label toggle, and then I can say, well, my text is, I'm just going to call this toggle, because we are going to do the same behavior that we just had on the button. So now all of a sudden my property window is empty. That's because I haven't specified whether to show the properties of my label or my button. I can choose that here, or I can also choose that here in my content pane. I can see I have my label, my button, so I can bring that back. Also notice how the toggle goes from the very left to the very right. That looks very squashed. If I would add more text here, then my left area gets bigger, but it's still going right to the very corner, which I don't like. So here I named this toggle, and of course I could add some spaces, but that is not an ideal way to deal with it. To make some padding, a good way to go about it is to create an empty border. You can think of that like a frame of a picture that is invisible, so it just holds the space. Now here, when I look at borders there, I can see the border properties not here, because borders are not that frequently used with labels. But I can go to this extra area that shows me more options, and if I scroll up, I can find here border. Now I'm clicking on those 3 dots. They take me to various borders. I like the empty border, that's the invisible one. And then it says, hey, where would you like the spacing? Top, left, bottom, right. I don't care about the top and bottom, but I want to have some spacing, some padding on the left and right. So on the left, I say 15. And on the right, I say 15. And you can see nothing happens. So it surely looks like an area where I should be able to enter numbers, but I can't. And this is something you encounter time and again, not just in Window Builder, but in all kinds of software, that we have an idea what should happen, it doesn't. And I totally want to encourage you, rather than being discouraged or frustrated, take these as an opportunity for troubleshooting, for problem solving, because that is very much at the heart of software development. So in software development, we are constantly problem solving and troubleshooting, and the moment you think you get really good at, somebody gives you harder challenges and we have to do it again. So we might as well embrace that. So I say, okay, this didn't work exactly as planned. Let's see in the source code what I can do. So I'm stepping to my source code. I can see Window Builder helped us out by adding an empty border. It just didn't allow us to specify the width, which isn't that terrible because I can add that right here in my source code. I roll over my empty border, and here it tells me we have top, left, bottom, right. That's the order. I don't care about the top, but in the left and in the right, I want to have 15. And let's run that and see how it looks like. So when I run my GUI now, I can see I have this left area that is toggle, and it has some padding, some space on the side. It looks so much nicer. I can still click it, but we're still toggling the background of the button. We haven't changed that part yet. But before we do so, I want to make sure we refactor here. Very important. Now it's tiny, just 3 lines, but this is the perfect time to refactor because we don't have any auto-generated code blocks yet. So the earlier you do it, the easier it is. So I'm going to select those 2 lines. I'm going to right click, refactor, extract the method, and you might be able to look up whatever is the shortcut on your computer. And then I like to be very consistent with my naming. This was called label toggle, so I'm going to call this create label toggle. And if you follow a pattern for the names in your GUI, in the private methods of your GUI, that makes your life much easier as the GUI grows in complexity. And this makes it easier to drill down and make sure your GUI works as expected and is robust. So at this point, I'm going to run it again. We just made a change. This was refactoring, works like before, but now I want to make another change. I want to, well, actually, before I toggle the background of my label, let's start by giving it a color at the very beginning. So I'm going back to my design view and I select my label right here, label toggle. I would like to give it a color. Now here are lots of different options because I'm in this area here that provides me multiple choices, but sometimes this can be overwhelming. So typically I like to go back and have fewer choices, and that makes it often easier to find what I need. So here it says background. I say fantastic, let's do the background. I'm going to make that orange, why not? So here is my orange, and I can see the background is clearly marked as orange. I don't see anything. Now if I go to my source view, even in my source view, I can see orange was added nicely inside the method where I like to have it. But if I run my GUI, my background is not orange. And some of you might remember from earlier activities that the labels are by default transparent. So if I want to see a background color, I have to set opaque. So here I'm looking for opaque. It's not here. Let's step back in here where I have more options. I go to opaque. That's a little bit strange here. It says this checkbox with false, but it really means right now it's false. But then when you click it, it's true. Now it is opaque. It's no longer transparent. And I do see my orange. See, that's fantastic. At this point, I want to go and I want to update my event handler. So I can double click here. I can switch to code. Let's just double click because that brings me straight to my event handler from my button that we started already. So at this point, we are setting the background from the button, my first button, but I want to change this. I would like to do kind of the same idea, but with my label toggle. So I'm going to my constructor. I say, well, here in my West, I have the label toggle. This is what I would like to affect. I would like to get the background and set the background. Oops. All those good things, but you can see I get a red squiggly line. When I roll over it, I can see that label toggle cannot be resolved. This means label toggle is not in scope in this area right here. Why not? Because it's a local variable in my constructor. My constructor has a body that goes from here to there. That's the code block, which is my constructor body, and that is the limit in which I can use label toggle. I need to extend the scope. So I want to make my label toggle a field. An easy way to do that is the following. I select that, right click, refactor, and here it says convert a local variable to a field. That is a very nice way to do it. I'm going to click that. So it says, hey, would you like to have the label toggle a field? Would you like it private? And initialize it the way you currently do it. It says those are great default settings. I like them. And you can see I still initialize my label toggle by calling the method create label toggle. It's still here added to the West. But importantly, it doesn't give me the type before label toggle anymore. Why not? It is now a private field that is declared inside my class. Now, sometimes I see students, they say, well, why not declare all of my JComponents as private fields? And you have 10, 20, 30 private fields. This is not a good style. So please don't do that. We want to have encapsulation. We want to keep the variables scoped to where we need it. So if the only place I need it is my method, it should be declared inside the method. And if it's only needed in my constructor, declare it in your constructor. And then as you find out you actually need it in other places as well, you can just refactor and make it a field like I just showed you. Now I'm scrolling down to my event handler right here. The event handler we're using is the action listener. And you can see all the red squiggly lines are gone. So let's see how this works. I'm going to run my program. And I see my first button. And as I click it, it toggles my color. Now I might just say, well, I'm not really fond of this yellow and the green. Of course, I could easily change this. We could make maybe the yellow orange. And instead of the green, by the way, you can create also your own colors. Java gives you a whole bunch of colors that are predefined, like red, orange, green. But you can also say you want to have a new color and specify the RGB values. I could say R, this is the red value, and the green value, and the blue value, something like this. And so here I'm going to do that a second time. Let's just grab the new color here instead of the green and see how this is going to look like. I'm going to run it one more time. Oops, let me see what I did. Oh, I added the semicolon. I'm not sure why I did this. Let's get rid of that. So let's run it. And when I click my button, you can see it toggles between the orange and then a darker orange. The darker orange is the one I specified here. Needless to say, we can not only change the background, I can change the foreground. And since I'm no longer changing the background, I want to make sure I don't use orange because I wouldn't be able to see the orange. So let's just run this, see how this is going to look like. And you can see how we change the foreground color this time. And you could change an image, you can change, all kinds of things from your label in the event handler of your button.